year or other year, depending on the age bracket. And this is a prerequisite for the performance of the air traffic control job. The air traffic controllers are behind the scene, playing a pivotal role in the air navigation or an air transport industry. Air traffic control is one of the most interesting and most stressful jobs in the world. Aside requiring a great deal of academic excellence, one requires or needs to pass a rigorous medical exercise, and this is done every year or other year, depending on the age bracket. The air traffic control plays a key and pivotal role in the air transport business, and this contributes largely to the economic growth of many nations and the world at large. A service that dates back 1920 started with the US post office and then generated into tracking of reconnaissance aircraft, and now is transformed into air traffic services. What then is air traffic control? Air traffic control, according to ICAO Annex 11, is a service provided for the purposes of preventing collision between aircrafts and vehicles and personnel, and also expediting and maintaining an orderly flow of air traffic. The service is generally categorized into three, namely aerodrome, approach, and area control services. And the categorization is basically based on the dimension of one's area of responsibility. Air traffic controllers worldwide have a unified body called the International Federation of Air Traffic Controllers Association, IFATCA. It was formed through the passion for the air traffic control profession that continues to exist in the minds and hearts universally, and this was formally realized on 20th of October 1961. The FATCA currently has 127 member associations and over 50,000 individual controllers as members of the association or the federation. And the goals of IFATCA are to promote safety, efficiency.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the fourth in a series of the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association Technical Webinar Series. We will start today's webinar with a short prayer, and I'll do that. Gracious Lord, thank you for the gift of life. Guide today's deliberations and deepen our understanding of content that's going to be shared. This we ask in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Now, the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association Technical Webinar Series provides a platform for aviation professionals and enthusiasts to discuss technical issues whilst promoting safety. And safety is our number one priority here at the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority. My name is Kwamna Ejeham. I'm an air traffic controller with the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, and I will be your host for today's webinar. By way of introduction, the mainstreaming of technological innovations into high-impact industries is unavoidable all over the world. The aviation industry is not left behind in this regard. Historically, the aviation industry has evolved and continues to do so on the back of new technologies. In recent years, research focus is shifting towards the mainstreaming of artificial intelligence into the aviation industry. Now, oftentimes, the mention of mainstreaming of AI into the aviation industry comes across as implying machines replacing humans in critical safety-related operational jobs, such as air traffic control, piloting, med forecasting, safety engineering, among others. But according to technology industry experts, artificial intelligence is already with us, and you probably use AI without knowing it. So what is it going to be? Is it machines versus humans, where they compete against each other? Or it's going to be machines and humans, where AI augments and reduces the workload on humans performing safety-related operational tasks? Well, to educate ourselves and the aviation community, we have chosen for our topic today, artificial intelligence in aviation systems. To help us learn more about the topic, we are very excited to have two experienced professionals in the industry, one from the IFATCA or the ATM, and also one from the airline. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome our panelists for today, Mr. Mark Baumgartner and Mr. Carl Borweg. Gentlemen, welcome and thanks for joining us. I will introduce each panelist. I'll read a short bio of each panelist before they present, but please, let's take note of the following information. If you have not followed the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association on any of our social media handles, please do so, and the handles are as shown at the bottom of the screen. If you have any feedback regarding the Air Traffic Controllers Association technical webinar series, please send us an email to info@gatca.org. info@gatca.org. Now, if you've just joined us, please introduce yourself on the chat page, and I will do well to acknowledge one or two people if there's time, maybe 3 or 4. And by the way, I'd like to acknowledge Daleth from Philippines. He's just joined us. And also Prosper from Ghana. Yes. And Saya from Algeria. Welcome, gentlemen. The Q&A tab is reserved for questions that will be answered during the Q&A session. And after the Q&A session, please stay on with us for a few more minutes as the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association launches its new website. Shortly before you exit, there will be a post-webinar survey. Please do well to fill it for us so that we can use it to gather information. Thank you. Our first panelist for today is Mr. Mark Baumgartner. Mark has worked as an air traffic controller and center supervisor at the Geneva Area Control Center for over 30 years. He's a former president and CEO of the International Federation of Air Traffic Controllers Associations, IFATCA, and IFATCA represents the technical and professional interests of more than 50,000 air traffic controllers from 137 countries around the world. He currently coordinates the CESA and EASA activities of IFATCA, and CESA is the Single European Sky Air Traffic Management Research Group, and EASA is the European Air Safety Agency. Mark is a former member of the Performance Review Body of IFATCA. He chaired the Eurocontrol Performance Review Commission until July 2021. Mark, good morning and thanks again for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Koane. Do you hear me?
Yes, I read you loud and clear. Please take it up from here.
Perfect. So can I start with my presentation?
Please share the screen and go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Do you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, just one question from my end. If there is something not working or the slides would be stalled, please just intervene and interrupt me so that we can try to solve that. So first of all, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for having invited me to this technical workshop of the Ghanaian Association. I have had the privilege in the past to visit Accra when I was the president of IFATCA, and I have one of my very good friends of the IFATCA work is Albert Taylor, who most of you might know. So I'm very honored and really I hope to be able to give you a little bit insight into this very difficult topic you have actually chosen for your technical workshop today. What is artificial intelligence in the ATM sector? And I have asked a second question, is it just something which goes beyond the automation of the housekeeping tasks? The introduction was done very nicely about my person. So just to be sure, I'm still an active air traffic controller, and my hobby is air traffic control. So I'm doing all the activities on the right-hand side in my free time, and the rest of the time, 100%, I work as an air traffic controller and center supervisor in Geneva, which is in Switzerland. IFATCA and new technology. This has been always part of the work of the International Federation of Air Traffic Control Association. Here, I show you a little bit what has been done over the years. So in the late 90s, there was a vision document, how the future would look like. We have participated in the publication of the global statement.
Hello, Mark.
Or the statement. Yeah.
Mark, quick one. Please make it a full screen. Your slides show a full screen.
For me,
at the
it's a
bottom
full
right, there should be a
screen.
tab at the bottom right that makes it a full screen.
Can you see it now as a full screen?
Please press
Because for
F5
me,
on your computer. F5 on your computer. That should give us a full screen.
No, F7 maybe.
F5. F7 or F5.
Okay, F7. Because I see it on my computer as a full screen. Let's try that here once again. Duplicate.
Very well, sir.
Maybe.
Please go on with the presentation. That's okay.
Like this is better?
That's all right. Yes,
no.
It is. Thanks.
So you see the full screen now?
I do.
Okay, wonderful. So we published a statement of the future of the global of air traffic management, and we continue to be involved in what we call automation. Once the digitalization or the new technology like artificial intelligence and machine learning came into place, at IFATCA we started to work on that. And we have created a series of workshops where we looked into what will the operator be in the future system? What are the technical, what are the possibilities and limitations of this new technology? And then also bringing all this together. So how can we benefit from the intelligence, the cleverness, and the adaptation of the human with these massive generation of data the digitalization will bring along. So that is something which is actually main activity of IFATCA in the past. So now my slides are not moving anymore. That's interesting. We have published, for those who are interested, different observers of these conferences. So we call them Digit ATMization newsletter. They are available on the webpage of IFATCA, so you can download that. A little bit of background information. I think this is also very important when we talk about digitalization, new technology. What does it mean when you digitalize an infrastructure? So basically you need to have an underlying infrastructure which is available. And then on top of that, you have sensors. These sensors you then try to actually put into a so-called data layer. So you are creating a data layer above the existing infrastructure and the sensors. This data layer will then generate loads of data, which we can call big data. And then once you have this big data, you put algorithm into the big data, and the algorithm will be deterministic or non-deterministic, depends a little bit what you have chosen as issues. And at a certain stage, it produces something which is called artificial intelligence. And it is the mirror of the reality. That means you create digitally something which reflects the reality. So that's a few basics to that. Why would you wish to digitalize the infrastructure? And I have applied these theoretical models to air traffic control. So you can have a cost reduction in design and construction of the infrastructure. Typically here, remote tower. So instead of building a tower, you put cameras, you generate a digital environment, and with that, you actually don't need to replace major infrastructure anymore in the same way as we did in the past. Then the maintenance part, how do you maintain the infrastructure? Here as well, an image or two images, pictures of a flight calibration flight of an ILS, on top and below a drone who does exactly the same thing, but at a much lower cost and at a much lower nuisance level. So you don't have to interrupt the traffic. You can do these things at night, low nuisance and low cost, and it gives you the similar results. Then also cost reduction on charging for the infrastructure use. Here, when you look at the remote tower control centers, on the bottom you have the Norwegians. They have created now like a ATC facility for 17 towers. So you don't have these different individual infrastructure projects. You have one infrastructure project. And then at a certain stage, you also will be able to reduce the cost of operating the infrastructure. So of what you are charging to the airlines, because the way you're generating air traffic control in the future will be assisted by the digitalized infrastructure. If we continue, here is something which shows as well that automation in air traffic management is something which started after the second automation. Sometimes the people do confuse automation and digitalization. It is not the same. The technologies which are used are not the same, and the results might also not be the same. But here you see clearly on the upper part elements which were automated in air traffic control, and below the research and the theory, because that's also very important, that there is also research going into all these developments, and the theory which helps to understand what we're doing, maybe from a more psychological point of view, or and these things have always been ongoing in air traffic management. When we talk about housekeeping in air traffic management, housekeeping in air traffic management means what? It means that many of the tasks you're doing, like changing the frequency, like verifying air clearance, like identifying if there is a conflict, all elements, changing the frequency, or exchange of flight plans, exchange of data from the cockpit down to the ground and vice versa. These are things which at the FATCA we call housekeeping tasks. So I show you here one a workplace, that is my workplace in Geneva. I have midterm conflict detection where you can actually, whenever an aircraft enters into your flight data processing system, the system will tell you if it has a conflict, and it will tell you when it has a conflict. And then you, the controller, will have to find a solution. And then we have so-called CLAM, clearance adherence monitoring. If I put a cleared level, you see that in the picture below, the long picture below is a Lufthansa 505. If I put in a level, but the FMS, the flight management system of the pilot has a different altitude. So you see, I have given 390 to the Lufthansa on my flight data processing scheme, but the pilot in his selected flight management system has 38,000 feet. It triggers an alert for me. So we are actually verifying the clearances. We have so-called what if tool icon on the top left. You see 3 aircraft which will be conflicting in about 10 minutes time, and you see 3 red headers there, and with these headers I can play and actually check what I am doing, if that makes sense or not. That's a so-called what if solution. And then we
Hello,
have
Mark.
multi-sector. Yeah.
Mark, I'd like to interrupt you a bit. My apologies for that. It appears your slides are not moving. Can you try activating it from the top left? Okay, they are moving now, because we weren't seeing the conflict. But yes, activate on the
Do you
top
see?
left. It should be from the 1, 2, 3. From the save button, yes, that's it.
So it's shall I continue like this? Maybe it's maybe easier for everybody.
If this
No?
is easier for you, that's fine. Please go ahead.
It's more for you that you don't. So you might also see my mouse. So can you see my mouse moving?
We can. We can see your mouse moving.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So they can show you that as well. So here we have the so this is the midterm conflict detection tool. This is the clearance adherence monitoring tool, and this is the so-called conflict detection, but also what if tool. Here we have a multi-sector planner tool. That means at the exit level, I have a tool which shows me if there is a conflict, it shows it in red, and so on. Then we have, of course, CPDLC, what I call what's up with the aircraft. We can send clearances by controller pilot data link. We do verify the clearance. We have among our sectors e-coordination. That means I can coordinate levels through the machine, and all these things are made possible because we have automated some of the tasks. We can also choose so-called replay functions. I move on. On the next slide, you see plenty of things. It is a bit animated. Maybe I can do the animation. Let's see. Can you see the animation or not? So here we have what the Europeans mainly are looking into when we talk about artificial intelligence. They have created plenty of potential applications, which you see: traffic prediction, better predicting when you go on an approach, what kind of descent profiles you're generating, and so on and so forth. EASA has published a very interesting roadmap, which is called Human-Centric Approach to Artificial Aviation. And there is also standardization bodies on both the European and the US side, EUROCAE, the so-called SIE, who are actually working on establishing some sort of standards which for artificial intelligence in air traffic control. I have changed again the presentation mode. Can you still see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay,
AI
so I
for
will
safety
try
critical
to.
systems.
Exactly. Here you see a same level horizontal separation from my home place at 370. This is a real traffic. You can find that on Instagram or on Flight Radar. You can animate these things. So these are all aircrafts which are at the same level and which are actually, that's my daily business, what we do. And this is done by the controller. So the identification of the conflict is done by machines, but the resolution of the conflict is done by the air traffic controller. So you see here on the next slide, you see the same situation, which is shown by the conflict detection manager, but then you have to use your cognitive possibilities as a human to actually solve the issue. And one of the potential where we could use artificial intelligence or machine learning in the future would be conflicts like I have shown to that. But the issue is there is a lot of prototype solutions for the time being around. So in my center, it's not the same that in the center next door. And the problem is that I am able in my center with a certain amount of traffic to do my work, but at a certain time, the cognitive workload becomes too much. So I can't continue to do that. And the housekeeping task, the more traffic you have, the more the housekeeping tasks to increase, and that limits in the end the capacity. So if we get some sort of assistance for reducing our workload, be it on the cognitive part, be it at the housekeeping part, which will reduce the workload overall, then we could offer to increase the capacity. So there is potential for artificial intelligence to help us. What is that meaning? That means what in our language currently what we're talking about is so-called CORA, Conflict Resolution Advisory. So instead of me turning left and right or climbing and descending with a given rate an aircraft which is in conflict with another one, in artificial intelligence or machine learning could provide to me solutions. to actually help me to solve the conflict. And instead of me using my time, my brain power to find the solutions, the machine would propose to me solutions and I could accept them or reject them. So that would be a way how we could actually introduce artificial intelligence and a safety critical system. You have here another tool which optimizes the approach sequences into an airport. This is currently being researched and currently being trialed in numerous European airports, where the optimization of the approach sequence is actually established by an artificial intelligence, by a machine learning tool who is able to help the controller to improve the overall performance. You also have tools like predicting go-arounds with using machine learning. So that could be also helpful that, for example, if you see that something is not really well established, so you don't have a stabilized approach, that the machine would give you an advice, be careful, here you might have a chance of a go-around, and that accordingly, you as a controller would adapt strategy. So there are elements which are being already a little bit researched. So air traffic management is actually a chaos. So it's in the
Hello,
sense,
Mark.
it is, yeah.
Please hold on. It appears your slides, okay, now they are moving. Please go ahead.
So,
the slides are moving now. All right.
Okay, good. I just showed you this one here, okay?
Yes.
And this one is the
That's slide
go-around
16,
prediction.
we're on slide 17 now, and 18.
Okay, 18, okay,
18
very good.
now, yes.
So,
Thanks.
ATM is a decision making in an uncertain environment, and therefore where you will apply it is a little bit difficult, because artificial intelligence likes very steady data. So a lot of inputs will have to be given before we can actually benefit from artificial intelligence. But there are other applications in aviation, which we most probably will hear about as well, which is network centric, which is fleet management, which is fuel management, which is environmental management. So there are plenty of applications in aviation which will most probably come into force before we will see big, huge developments of artificial intelligence in air traffic control. One of the things which is very, very important as well, which will also give us issues, I'm not saying they are not unsolvable, but they will give us issues, is the liability issue. Nowadays, you more or less are able to prove what your systems are doing by safety cases, by also liability, legal liability, accountability discussions. In the future, with non-deterministic neural network, for example, you don't know why the machine proposes you a solution. So if the solution is wrong, or if the solution leads to a bad outcome, who is responsible? Do we need to actually create a robotic law? Do we need to adapt the current way of having the legal system working in case of a serious incident or accident? These are challenges which needs to be really also addressed when we talk about artificial intelligence. Now at IFATCA is a very, very busy slide, but at IFATCA we have created a label or a federating umbrella, which we call the joint cognitive human machine system. And you see here the mind map, what it all could include. So what does it mean? How do we secure the active involvement of human? What will be the social problems, typically liability issue? Who will be in control? How do we bring all these people together? The engineers, the programmers, the developers, the controllers. What kind of autonomy do we want? So do we want a completely fully automated system? You had in your introductory video Zipline, there is a part of the operations which is fully automated. So how far do you want to have automated operation in air traffic control? And also what kind of image would we like to give? These are all elements which should come into that. I will not be talking about drones today. I am really just wanted to show you where we already use artificial intelligence. These are cybersecurity issues in air traffic control and in aviation. So there is already a lot being carried out. What the people who are doing cybersecurity in air traffic management are finding is that you always need a human who can assess and interpret the results to actually define what it means. So the machine can massively actually look at the data which is generated, but the data doesn't always make sense. So you always need a human. However, you have now data which is generated, massive data which the humans could not produce in such a rapid way. So in one of the seminars we organized, we had oncologists from the University Hospital in Geneva, and they have actually, they're using artificial intelligence in radiology, and the results are more or less the same from a quality point of view, but the artificial intelligence is much quicker. So an artificial intelligence can run throughout the night, throughout one night, images of a radiology unit, which takes to one doctor, a trained doctor, a whole week. So there are clear advantages, but it doesn't mean that the human will disappear. So this is also something which is quite important. And based on that, we have created what we call the joint human-machine cognitive system. So in the past, or sometimes still now, you have the human versus the machine approach. That means the human is better in this, the man is better in that. What we are trying to develop is a human and machine together, a complementary task. So for those who maybe are a little bit familiar with the theory, we call it a traditional approach to implementing new technology, when we said, well, the mans are good in this and the machines are good in that. So let's focus on what the machine is doing well, and let's focus on what the human is doing well. When we brought these things together, sometimes it didn't work out. So that was a classical way. What we are proposing actually is that we do have one functions, instead of saying the machine will do only this and the human will be there in case the machine can't cope with that. We would like to see that we develop jointly functions which can only be done together with the machine and the human, and we call that what we call that the functional allocation. So the human would then contribute with what? He would be verifying the technical decisions. He could improve the technical system. He could also learn, and he could manage the uncertainty which the machine will, the data will produce. He will take responsibility, show commitment and dedication. And of course, he's empathic, creativity, he can improvise. But for that, you need to give a clear role to the human. You also need to design the system in such a way that it is not designed for the leftover strategy. And I'm coming towards the end of my presentation, but that leftover strategy, if you maybe want to keep something in mind from the presentation, is a leftover strategy. You can automate, or you can bring in artificial intelligence and machine learning, but at a certain stage, it has its limits. And then what? And then what? Then you say, the human will handle that. No, that doesn't work anymore. So to take an example of air traffic control, and I move I move on with the slide. Take an example, what I showed you. Level crossing at 370, I can maybe handle in a sector like I showed you in Geneva up to 25 aircraft. Now, if we have a tool who helps me to reduce my cognitive workload, then I can maybe increase to 35 or 40 aircraft at any given moment. But what happens if the machine doesn't work at that moment and it says, oh, now you take over the human? So this leftover strategy gives us quite a lot of headache when we develop this so-called joint human machine system at IFATCA. So it should be that we actually, when we want to achieve this, is that we want to bring the decision maker, the system decision maker, the system designers, and the front end operators together. We would also like to have the strengths of both of the human and the machine, that they are together and that to achieve the systemic goals. And of course, we would also like to have design which is designed for the human, not just designed for something which in the end is not very humanistic, and will then reduce or increase basically the risks that it doesn't work out. So what is needed? The future technical improvement needs to focus on system rather than components, and on tasks rather than structures, to be able to cope with complexity and deliver the expected benefit. A participatory design or cooperative design that actively involve all the stakeholders in the design process to help and to ensure the results meets their needs. So that is my last slide. Here is from our conference at IFATCA in Ghana, one of the pictures which was reproduced in the newspaper, where we were very honored to have been able to be hosted by GATCA for our annual conference. What I would like to say is that, as a few end remarks, artificial intelligence, machine learning are a hype which will hit our sector as well. It will not hit air traffic management as first. You will hear most probably later on, it will hit first other part of aviation. Nevertheless, because there is such an enthusiasm and there is such a willingness to adopt and embrace these new technology, because they bring a lot of good things, we will see enthusiasm developing at the air navigation service provider level, which might not be very helpful to achieve an overall game. And what we are trying to contribute at the very beginning from IFATCA is that before we launch Coastly project, which will never materialize, that we actually ask ourselves as a community altogether how we will bridge this gap to this new technology. And for that, we think this joint cognitive human machine system approach is a potential benefit. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark, for the brief and yet insightful presentation. I think my takeaway is one of the last comments you made. Mainstreaming of artificial intelligence in the industry will hit us one way or the other. Maybe not hit air traffic management at first, but it will hit other aspects of the industry. And but it also presents liability questions. When we fully mainstream, who takes responsibility for decisions? And I'm sure at the Q&A session, a lot of more questions will come in this regard. Thanks a lot. Please stay with us. I'm sure some questions have already started coming in for you. So please stay with us, and thanks a lot. Let me take this opportunity also to, before our second panelist comes on, to acknowledge a few more people who have introduced themselves on the chat page. We have Jacqueline Atuher from Kampala. Jacqueline, welcome. Dominic Adai from PHI Century. Esther Tineje from the World Food Program in Juba. Percy from GMET. Mauta in Qatar. Mr. Charles Labi from Tamale. Good morning, Manager Charles. Kwabnampon from UG, University of Ghana Computer Science Department. Squadron Leader George Ej Kappa. Thanks for joining. I will quickly go on to read a short bio of our second panelist. Our second panelist for this morning is Mr. Carl Bolwerk. Carl qualified for his pilot wings in the South African Air Force in July 1983. After 12 years in the South African Air Force, he joined ComAir and flew with them for 7 years, and then joined the South African Airways for another 20 years. He is currently the president of the Airline Pilots Association of South Africa, and also the regional vice president for the AFI South region of the International Federation of Airline Pilot Association. Carl, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Please share your screen. We can see you. Share your screen.
Okay, let me try again.
Okay, we can see your slides.
Very good.
You're sharing your screen now. Excellent.
Yeah, it's good, is it?
It is good.
Oh, fantastic. Right, jolly good. Okay.
Please from there.
Thank you for that introduction. and also the opportunity to be part of your technical webinar. I've got memories of visiting Accra as when I used to fly for SAA, and also as a IFALPA member at various ICAO and Ghana ATC events. So I look forward to being back one day. My presentation, I'll be discussing the following: artificial intelligence and machine learning. Just a bit of background, because I needed that background for myself, because I wasn't quite aware what it all involves. But as you mentioned, it's around, it's amongst us, and we are probably unaware of it. Now I'll take a quick look at what some Airbus projects, and then a NASA study. In 2017, NASA did a study to assess the impact of reduced crew and single pilot operations in commercial transport operations. Now I'd like to finish off with just to explain the IFALPA concerns regarding reduced crew operations. So yeah, what is machine learning? What is artificial intelligence? As Mark said, it's artificial intelligence uses machine learning to mimic human intelligence. Now the computer has to learn how to respond to certain actions. So it uses algorithms and historical data to create a model. Now these models will then start making predictions. I'm sure you've all used Google search. So all it does, Google then takes your past web searches and interactions on websites and tailors the experience particularly just for you. Now, machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence, which refers to automated detection and reading from patterns in data. So some examples of virtual assistants is Siri and Alexa. Now, other interesting example of how video surveillance uses artificial intelligence to detect a crime before it happens. So they track unusual behavior in people like loitering or standing around for a long time or napping on benches and things like that. So the system uses this information to alert the human attendants who can then intervene. In the cockpit, eye tracking technology provides real-time intelligence where pilots are looking, and also whether eye movement indicates evidence of possible fatigue. Just a couple of examples in the automotive, the railway, and then in the aviation or the airline system. So on a vehicle, complex sensors and actuators with advanced computer vision functions are used to constantly update maps and of the surroundings, detect presence of other vehicles, other pedestrians, measure distances, closing distance, opening distances, detect uneven surfaces for roads and sidewalks. Interesting thing, the Tesla vehicles are all connected to one another and they share this information. So if you're driving along and you have to make a sharp turn at a cross section, other vehicles will, once this information has been downloaded, they will know how to do that maneuver. In the railway, the main objective of automation in the railway is trains to operate more trains on existing infrastructure by optimizing speed and enabling traffic flow more smoothly. More trains on the same stretch of track means possibility of transporting more people and goods. Can you see where this is going? Aviation. Interestingly enough, the Airbus 350 has some very interesting capabilities. One of them being an automatic emergency descent. So in the event of a cabin depressurization, the autopilot will automatically perform emergency descent to a lower, safer altitude. In fact, it will even fly a lateral offset for you. So this mode is triggered once the cabin pressure falls below a predetermined limit. However, the system will only start the descent if there's no reaction from the crew 15 seconds after having been alerted. Another interesting feature is an automatic TCAS RA. With the autopilot engaged, it will automatically fly the maneuver. And once clear of the conflict, the aircraft will climb back to its original target altitude. When you're driving a car using Google Maps, going wherever you are going, the Google algorithm will show you the quickest route. However, if it detects a traffic jam, it will show you an alternative route. Now, the modern flight management system can do the same thing, because real-time information on adverse weather, turbulence, increased patterns, or any other adverse circumstances can be used to recalculate a route. An open science white paper titled Machine Learning in Certified Systems, submitted in March 21, says the following. If these techniques prove to be effective, they could then pave the way to new operational capabilities, fair enough, such as automated takeoff, which in fact has been done, single pilot operations, autonomous commercial transport. The plot thickens. So let's have a look at what Airbus says. Autonomous flight has the potential to deliver increased fuel savings, reduce operational costs for airlines, support pilots in their strategic decision-making, mission management. So these include autonomous takeoff and landing. On the 16th of January, 2020, Airbus completed the first fully automatic vision-based takeoff on an Airbus 350. Rather than flying an ILS, the AI-controlled takeoff was governed by image recognition software installed in the aircraft. Connect. This enhanced multi-crew operation enables the crew to better organize their presence in the cockpit during the cruise. Pilots can achieve better balance between working and resting, optimize fatigue management on long-haul flights, and can concentrate on the most strategic tasks to enhance safety. I suspect this has to do with reduced crew operations, but I could be wrong. The last one, disruptive cockpit, is the word. This enhanced cockpit is designed to enable single pilot operations for new aircraft. Need I say more? Now, the NASA study, in 2017, NASA, in cooperation with, in partnership with the FAA, attempted to quantify the pilot's contribution in flight safety during normal and non-normal operations. The studies were carried out on a 737-800 simulator. 36 pilots, 18 crews from 5 major US carriers participated. Each pilot had an ATP and was current on the 737-800 as either a captain or a FO. Now, crews were paired together from the same airline to minimize inter-crew conflicts with standard operating procedures, crew resource management procedures, or training. The goal of this exercise, or the study, was to identify technology requirements, new automation, and more appropriately, increasing autonomous systems. I'll talk about the difference a little bit later, that might assist future crew operations and potentially enable reduced crew operations and single pilot operations. Now let's have a look what it is. Reduced crew operation. As normally, there are 2 pilots in the cockpit, sometimes more when it's a long haul flight. But there are always 2 pilots when the workload is high. For instance, the taxi out, the takeoff, the initial climb, the planning of the approach, for that matter, the descent, the approach, and the landing. However, in the cruise, for reduced crew operations, in the cruise, there's only 1 pilot actively flying the aircraft. The other pilot could either be resting or napping, for that matter. As a matter of fact, he or she might not even be in the cockpit. So during the NASA study, the designated resting pilot was donned a visual audio restriction device to be isolated from what's happening in the cockpit. And the resting pilot was only called back when by the pilot flying when requested to do so. Now, single pilot operations, exactly what it is. There's only 1 pilot in the cockpit. He or she does all the work. So in the event of requiring assistance, you can get a ground operator or a remote pilot, maybe linked to the cockpit via a digital data link, video, or a radio. So for the purpose of the study, either the captain or the FO was seated in the left-hand seat, and the other pilot was not even in the simulator. So that brings me to incapacitation or impairment. So the findings of the study indicated that in either single pilot operations or reduced crew operations, pilot impairment or incapacitation could be catastrophic. Now, incapacitation, how often does that happen? From a medical point of view, not that often, but it does. It has happened before, and it more than likely will happen before. So, but if it does happen, it could be catastrophic. Impairment, well, an example of impairment is fatigue, and that brings me to the next point. Controlled rest is a very effective countermeasure for combating fatigue. And research has indicated by just napping for maybe 20 minutes is the most effective technique for restoring alertness. However, regulators only authorize in-flight napping for flight crew if there are 2 or more pilots. Now, some work will have to be done to keep a single pilot occupied and actively engaged to prevent boredom and sleep. Just a couple of concluding remarks. So with reduced crew operations, the start of the normal and the non-normal checklist was often delayed until the resting pilot had returned to the cockpit. This condition was occasionally problematic, since the flying pilot may or may not even have started the appropriate checklist. During single pilot operations, many pilots noted that they needed a lot of time to brief the remote pilot on what was happening. And as a result, they lost a lot of valuable time, increasing their workload to the extent that it would actually cancel out the benefit of a remote pilot or remote assistance. Significant task shedding occurred, and checklist usage was often sacrificed. Difficulty in hand flying, specifically for the single pilot operation, difficulty in hand flying and troubleshooting by the single pilot created complications in getting to the checklist and encouraging troubleshooting. And often troubleshooting was done because they never got to the checklist. Troubleshooting was done outside the checklist, and that that resulted to more errors. Flight path performance was better in 2 crew operations than single pilot or reduced crew operations. 2 pilots provide better monitoring and troubleshooting and workload sharing, and in particular when involved with physical workload of controlling an aircraft, which is within an abnormal situation. They found when pilot workload exceeded certain limits, the pilot would shed tasks, and in doing so, errors would occur, particularly errors in execution or omission. So in general, more errors were committed in single pilot operations or reduced crew operations. And as I said, these were errors of omission and errors of commission. And finally, the study concluded that single pilot operations pose an unacceptable risk particularly in non-normal situation. Now, I want to discuss what I felt the position under the following headings: normal checklist, the time lost, difficulty in hand flying. So this is there we go. So the IFALPA position: safety benefits, significant risks outweigh the perceived advantages, public policy and opinion, improvements information, a higher priority, and there's no economic justification to replace the pilot. So first of all, the safety benefits. So despite recent technological advances, aircraft manufacturers remain far from proving a level of automation that would provide a level of safety equivalent to having 2 well-rested, well-trained and qualified pilots in the flight deck at all times. Throughout the entire flight, pilots are always cross-checking and monitoring one another. There's a clear inverse relationship between pilot workload and safety, particularly during non-normal operations. As I mentioned, flight path performance was better with two pilots and compared to a reduced or the single pilot operation. Flight deck coordination with 2 pilots sitting side by side on the flight deck can closely coordinate their actions. The communication is based on natural language, gesture, posture, eye gaze, etc. With a remote pilot, primary concern is the ability or the inability to know what the other pilot is doing, what he's actually thinking. Now, research from the medical fraternity it showed that visual monitoring of team members' activities was an important part of team coordination and an essential part of teamwork. The emergency response. Now, there are numerous documented incidents where two pilots were necessary to actually save the day. One was the 2009 incident of the US Airways landing on the Hudson. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. And recently, a 2018 incident when the Southwest 737 suffered a catastrophic engine failure and debris shattered the window and entered the cabin. The significant risks outweigh the perceived advantages. First of all, cybersecurity. Signal encryption and authentication are the best defense against such attacks. However, adequate encryption requires high-tech solutions and infrastructure, both of which are expensive and not always available worldwide. Moreover, countries have different laws governing the use of encryption technology, and some of them even ban it altogether. I mentioned workload. Without pilot monitoring in the cockpit, the pilot flying would face a substantially higher workload, and especially under non-normal conditions. The result resulted in a higher risk and shedding and task shedding and more errors. Studies also show that ground-based assistance does not necessarily offset the higher workload. Coordination that goes hand in hand with the workload. Once again, two pilots sitting next to one another facilitates close coordination that is essential to smooth and safe operations. When the pilots are not co-located, coordination suffers due to loss of non-verbal communication, and as a result, lower situational awareness. Situational awareness is reduced. Now, over-reliance on automation. Excessive reliance on automation, on automatic systems can negatively impact performance and erode flying skills. We actually have seen that. Automation can lead to complacency on the flight deck as pilots become less vigilant in their monitoring. Now, present-day automation is not sufficient for single pilot operation. It forces the pilot into a pilot monitoring role, which is not suitable or not ideally suited for humans, especially he's the only person in the cockpit. Now, automated systems typically run within a well-defined set of parameters and are very restricted in what tasks they can perform. Decisions made or actions taken by an automated system are based on predefined rule of thumb strategies. On the other hand, autonomous systems learn and adapt to the dynamic environment and evolve as the environment around it changes. The data it learns and adapts may be outside what it is contemplated when the system was deployed, which could be a problem. Systems that are originally automated may need to become smarter over time as the usage and the environment in which they operate change. Autonomy, as opposed to automation, should be responsive and adaptable to the needs of the human. Technological hurdles. Now, to truly replace the second pilot on the flight deck, machines will need to replicate the sensing, assessing, reacting, adapting, interacting capabilities of a human in a complex and dynamic environment. So, bottom line, have to be more user-friendly. Public policy, well, first of all, regulations. Regulations regarding aviation is clear or are clear. There must be two pilots in the cockpit or on the flight deck on large transport or cargo aeroplanes. Secondly, public opinion. that actually disapproves of one pilot or maybe reduced pilot operations. And a poll conducted by the Airlines Pilots Association International, or USALPA, or not USALPA as we know, 80% of the respondents agreed that at least two pilots working together on the flight deck are best equipped to handle flight emergencies. 96 of federal aviation research dollars, 96% said research should be spent on other things instead of eliminating the pilot in the cockpit. We feel there are other priorities. As Mark pointed out, airspace is becoming increasingly congested, particularly with entry of drones and taxis. Would it not be beneficial to rather spend the funds on in these areas? There are alternative research. Fuel is now becoming an issue, and it's going to hurt the cost of the airline. So if we can, if industry can invest more in fuel consumption, things that can impact the environment, better batteries, and maybe even electric propulsion, reduce noise, supersonic travel, things like that. It'll be a long way if we can do that. There's no evidence that reducing the number of pilots in the cockpit saves or lowers airline tickets. Automation, communication, sensor technologies are decades away from being able to provide the same level of safety as the second pilot in the cockpit. It is doubtful that technology will ever reach the same level of safety that of two pilots provide. And then environmental costs. Reduced crew operation, huge amounts of data would have to be transferred and processed to be robust, protected, and in an expeditious manner. And all this is going to take up a lot of energy. So, conclusion, my final slide. It is often said that 80% of accidents are caused by human factors. This is used to imply that improvement in safety can be gained by eliminating the human element in the flight deck. This argument is a complete fallacy. There's no data that identifies how often and how pilots prevent or avert accidents or incidents, as these statistics aren't kept. So, IFALPA fully supports any development that improve the current safety and security standards in commercial air transport. Our enviable safety record and culture is based upon at least two properly rested, fully qualified, and well-trained pilots at the controls of the flight deck during all phases in flight. It is imperative that any future evolution of this benchmark improves upon it and does not degrade the safety and security level in any area. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Carl. Well, there were just 13 slides, but it was really loaded with a lot of information. Well, to sum it up, I think that it's safe to say that you think that you're of the opinion that the significant risks of mainstreaming artificial intelligence into critical safety-related operational jobs far outweigh the perceived benefits. And it's supported by statements such as having two properly rested crew is one of the most important safety items in the cockpit. You also feel that automation is decades away from providing the safety levels that currently exist, and that it's of the view, IFALPA is of the view that research should focus on other areas rather, such as sustainable energy and fuel, battery system, among others. Thanks a lot for the presentation. We will move on to the Q&A session, but before we do so, let me please take the opportunity to acknowledge a few more people who have been generous to introduce themselves in the chat page. May I also remind attendees that please send questions to the Q&A tab, not to the chat page, to the Q&A tab, not to the chat page. Thanks. I'd like to acknowledge Flight Lieutenant Esther Ofori, from the Air Force. Alex Mainster, GCA, Air Traffic Control. Gertrude Alovo. Holali Le. Mr. Techi, GCA. Elsie Amoa from Konfanochi Teaching Hospital. Nice of you to join us, Elsie. You're a psychologist from Konfanochi. Thanks. We have Shukuru Nziku from Tanzania and Maureen Isika from Kenya. We also have Fred Gakuba from Rwanda. Captain Aite is also joining us from the Africa World Airlines. So we will quickly move on to the Q&A session. Before I take the first question, please note that the video, this webinar is being recorded and the video will be uploaded on our social media handles, as well as our website, our soon to be inaugurated website. Thank you. Now, the first question is from Kwesi Mensah. And Mark, would you like to take this one? Kwesi Mensah wants to know if there's any backup for the system, as in when there's an integration of AI into aviation systems. Is there a backup in case of failure? Is Mark on? Mark, can you please unmute your mic?
Yeah. So the host unmuted my mic, so now I can speak. I hope that's good. Okay.
All right. Very
so
well.
what I started to say is, honestly, I don't know. So this is part of and that is the challenges as well. You know, when we have in aviation, we have standardized way of looking at safety cases. So these are established norms. You have Annex 19 of ICAO introducing a safety management system, and there everybody understands what they have to do. You can explain what you have been doing. You can explain why you're putting a fallback system, a telephone fallback system into place, and why you have a second radar or data processing system in place. These things you can explain. Now with artificial intelligence, the challenges will be that the algorithms which you task with something to generate a digital layer or digital data, you do not necessarily know what and why they produce this data, the output. So the redundancy of systems which are based on artificial intelligence is very challenging, to actually identify. There are no standards. The people who are working with such new technology in air traffic management, they have already come to some conclusions that, first of all, you need to curate your data. Curating your data means the data which goes into the machine, that the machine can learn from that. That needs to be, this data set needs to be tailor-made. So you need to curate, really put a lot of effort into that. But by doing that, you actually bring in new regional, local intelligence into the algorithm. So this algorithm will then behave exactly how you have trained him. And then you don't know why he behaves differently at a certain stage, because that's the miracle or the challenges of the algorithm, which are on other things very, very beneficial. So to answer the question, I really don't know. So, but what we are worried at IFATCA is, that's what I mentioned before, is the so-called leftover strategy. So you run, the system will run, everything is good, everything is nice, and suddenly you say, oh no, the system is not working anymore, so human take over. But the human has no more chance, because the human was not integrated in the process until the moment where the system doesn't work. Sorry to have no better answer to this question.
That's fine. I'm going to do a follow-up from Kwesi Mensah again, but I think you can both have a bite on this. Well, the introduction of this system, Carl has already mentioned that the research is geared towards single piloted airliners, among other things. Does the same apply for air traffic controllers? Do we foresee, is research in the direction of reducing the number of controllers or the number of sectors?
I don't know, Carl. I saw that you wanted to react on the first when I say so. Maybe we could just before I go into the next question, maybe offer Carl the opportunity to add something to the first question. What do you think?
That's fine. That's fine. He can actually do a bite on both, and then we go on.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add to this. You know, the designer of whatever system they're doing, you better have done his homework, because if something does go pear-shaped, you can't say, "Oh, we never thought of that," and that is our concern. Is if something goes wrong, something goes pear-shaped, you got to go, well, this is not going to work. Back to the pilot, and over all these years, the pilot has lost his skills because everything has become so automated, and then it becomes a race to the bottom.
Right.
Literally.
I guess both of your opinions are aligned in this regard. Mark, would you only have something to say about this as well?
Yeah.
Will this lead to a reduction in staffing?
No. Not in air traffic control staffing. No. What we foresee is that it will lead to an increase of the quality of the service. So it will increase the capacity you can offer. It might increase the safety what you offer. So you will be able to increase capacity while maintaining the same level of safety. But it doesn't, at least what we foresee for the next 50 years, it will not be a challenge for the air traffic controllers. That does not mean that other operational or technical employees of air navigation service provider might not be affected. Okay, so typically, if you have a flight calibration service which belongs to the air navigation service provider, when you replace the aircraft by drones, you don't need the pilots anymore. You can fly, you can train of the calibration flight. You can train drone pilots, and you don't need your aircraft anymore. So there are clearly changes which will occur in the world of air traffic management due to the changing nature of artificial intelligence. I don't remember exactly, but there is also in this hype, we tend to think that the human will be replaced, but actually what we observe is that the artificial intelligence is also creating much more work. It is maybe not where it was initially, but it's shifting. So you don't necessarily see it immediately. But to give you the example, remote tower in Sweden and in Norway. So you have a remote place somewhere up north in Sweden. It is being decided that the air traffic control facility will be closed and moved 300 kilometers into a remote tower center, and from there the controllers will be doing the job. So you take away from the local community the air traffic controller and you send him 250 kilometers away with his family, blah 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 blah, all the organizational and social issues. But then the airport realizes that the air traffic controller was collecting the airport charges, was driving the snow plug, was coordinating the noise issues, was helping the commune with hiring or with attracting new flights. And the commune says, but now we have to hire 2 people to do the job, which the air traffic controller did. So you see, it is really very interesting to observe that the artificial intelligence doesn't really bring, from a total system approach, in our domain, at least in air traffic management, the benefits some people imagine.
Yeah,
Very well.
it's often mentioned that when the developer had something in mind, is that the operator had something totally different in mind. And as a result, as you mentioned, the social effects, all those things have not been considered.
Yeah. So there's a social implication of this as well, if I get you right.
Absolutely.
Hello?
I mean, this is when you see now in Norway, you have 17 airports moving into one center. That means 17 times you have people who are disappearing, who were not just doing air traffic control in these communities, they were doing other things. So the community itself will have to replace these other activities the person was doing. And so from a systemic point of view, it is not necessarily such a huge benefit. But we are learning. We are learning with it. These are things we discover while we go along. So.
And you can imagine aviation personnel or, well, controllers play a lot of roles out of the office in the wider society. Well, so I get a sense that if FATCA believes that AI is going to enhance human capabilities to a large extent when it is fully mainstreamed, but if FAPA is of the view that the direction of the research now is not going to help, nor is it going to improve safety, am I right in that regard? Both of you can have a take on this.
Well, maybe I can go first. For us, it's something which will come, but we think it is, if I may call it, the peripheral elements which will be affected first. So we have now first tools which look where artificial intelligence helps on the trajectory prediction when it comes to flow management issues. So in Europe, you know, we work with the so-called Central Flow Management Unit, which is located in Brussels. That means all the air navigation service providers to provide to this to this network manager, as it is called now, their capacity in sector opening hours, and things like this. And the airlines do actually provide to the network management all the flight plans which are scheduled. And then there is a demand capacity balancing, which has been done by the so-called network manager. Now, typically, in order to assist the flow management positions in the individual air traffic management center, there are now trials being done with artificial intelligence where you can simulate during your actual operations what if you reclear higher level, lower level, direct routing, and so on. And it shows you the impact live on other sector workload. So that is absolutely brilliant. These are brilliant applications of artificial intelligence, and these are brilliant applications because they are not confined to the regional or local ATC unit. They look into the whole trajectory of the flight, and that you can't do with the current system. So there, an artificial intelligence tool or a machine learning tool is an add-on. Certainly. But again, these are peripheral things, and therefore we think it will start to come in slowly, but we will not have a machine providing ATC separation in 10 years time. This is simply not possible.
Yeah. Copied. Carl, any take on that? Just to reinforce the position.
You're absolutely right. I mean, when it comes to developing and improving systems and enhancing systems for better efficiency and better safety, that's all good and well. But I think I felt that the bottom line is, if the manufacturers or the designers of whatever they're designing, if they can prove or they can improve on the current level of safety that two well-trained, well-rested pilots can offer, then we can talk. But before they can prove that it's not safe, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's not negotiable.
Very well, very well. Thank you. So we have another question from Benjamin Asarimokwa. So he wants to know, what's the main motivation for the attempts to mainstream or research to mainstream AI in aviation? Is it to reduce cost or to improve safety? Any of you can take that as well. Or well, both. We can start with Mark.
Okay, thank you. So that is not IFATCA, that's Mark Baumgartner talking, okay? So My theory is as follows. We have low-cost airlines, we have also legacy carrier who have understood that without machine learning and artificial intelligence, they will not be able to sell their product. So it's a commercial initiative which works extremely well. We have low-cost airlines who do use artificial intelligence, machine learning for commercial activity, meaning selling tickets, selling the seats, adjusting the prices on time. And this is something which you really get the benefits out of it. You also have for maintenance of aircraft, but I think Carl is much more up to date for maintenance of aircraft. Airbus has I know it from Airbus, they have the so-called digital twin. So all the data which are generated by the aircraft, and there are terabyte of data for one flight, which takes 6 hours of flight, which are downloaded. They are used at Airbus with artificial intelligence algorithm to improve the maintenance, to predict maintenance. You have also command center of the airlines, which are using artificial intelligence to interpret meteorological data. So all these things do exist, and they do exist in a successful way. That means it gives an economical benefit to the airlines. And from there, it's just a question of transpiring into the other sectors of aviation, and we are one of the next sectors. So that's, I think it comes rather from there. Now, the challenge is that aircraft, flying aircraft is has a much higher degree of automation, and in particular a much higher degree of standardization than the ground infrastructure. We're a piecemeal of prototyped ATC infrastructure. We have no common standard, neither regionally nor globally, on flight data processing system. So you have some sort of industry adaptation, prototyping, and things like this, which means that we are still far away of having a homogeneous digital layer which could be put over our infrastructure. So you still need to adapt that, and therefore maybe for air traffic management, it is a hype, but maybe it's less attractive than for the flying part, because there you have standardized products, you have standardized procedures in maintenance and things like this, which helps, of course, to get better and cost conscious decisions for those who are having to buy or making investment decisions.
You know, from a costing point of view, they
Please
always
go ahead, Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
From a costing point of view, it's always well, yeah, pilot salaries and things like that. But if you look at, you still have to train the remote pilot. It's not as if you're taking them out of the loop. So someone has to be there. How effective is that's debatable. In addition to not training, you still need all those equipment on board to make it safer. So whether you're going to save cost with replacing the second pilot with a computer or artificial, that remains to be seen.
Very well. There's another question. I think Carl, this goes to Carl. Will AI lead to cheaper travel? And I think this person must be somebody who travels a lot.
Definitely right.
Yes, but are there applications for airport management, for instance, aviation security, scanning at the airport, facial recognition, that are very, very relevant in today's aviation, especially in aviation security and ATM security? Any of you can take that.
I mean, if you look at airports now, there's self-check-in. So we're actually doing away with someone sitting at the counter. So in that sense, that's artificial intelligence. You mentioned that security at airports, surveillance cameras and things like that. So that all it's all in the big picture of aviation.
All right. Yes. 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 Well, so it's
And
not all. Please go ahead.
yeah, I think also one thing which we need to keep in mind, we are still in our world, okay? But the artificial intelligence world or the new technology world is outside. So one could very well imagine that Google tells you, we know that you will be flying from Accra to London and that your estimated takeoff time is at 1800 today, local time. So because there is a traffic jam to the airport, there is a queue of 2 hours to go through security. We would like to invite you now to leave, whereas you would be leaving maybe in 2 hours' time. So your complete end-to-end trip experience is something Uber is talking about this, but maybe Google will offer that. And then Google will get sufficient data that they also can start to run the airline's operations. And then once they have, and you see that with flight radar, nowadays in flight radar, you have so many air traffic control related data
Yes.
that
Yes.
we sometimes use flight radar to know what exactly is going on. You know, when we have an aircraft, we don't know exactly what he's doing, we look on flight radar. So the outsiders of the aviation scenes, the big digital platforms, they will come in with tools and methods and concept we have not even thought of. And I think that is more the challenge that we will be having to understand at a certain stage what that could mean and where we could have a place in these new scenarios. So that's where I see that artificial intelligence should not be underestimated also in air traffic management, because it will come, but from somewhere else, you know, from a digital platform point of view.
Yeah, maybe not related, but the joys of social media. When you talk about flight radar, when someone notices the aircraft going on a hold for some other reason, immediately they speculate, oh, something's wrong and what's happening here.
Yeah. Well, now it's open source, so everybody has access to the information. And I think that you both agree with me that, and I'm sure our attendees will also agree that in the research and design of these systems, industry professionals must be involved right from the beginning so that the concerns can be taken on board. We are having a lot more questions coming in, but due to time constraints, what we would do is take on board these questions, type them out, send it out to our panelists. When they answer it, we will email it back to all attendees at a later time. So I will acknowledge a few more people, and then we will move on quickly to the next item on the agenda. Carl and Mark, I'd like to say a big thank you. Please stay with us and then till the end. Thanks.
Only a pleasure.
So I would like to invite the president of the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association, Mr. Francis Amamensa, to launch our new website. And please note that today's technical webinar will be uploaded to our website. Older webinars will also be uploaded onto the website as well. So please visit the website when it is launched. Thank you. Francis.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Kwame.
We can hear you loud and clear this time.
Thank you. And thank you, panelists, for such a wonderful insight on AI. And as we all know, GATCA, Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association, needs a unique way to connect with the world. Hence, the need to establish an online presence by launching a website. This website will help to establish our image by we are and what we represent. At the same time, it becomes a resource for our members and the public, giving them access to information they need. This website seeks to provide the platform that promulgates pertinent information about GATCA, our executive council, the industry, GATCA statistics, news, and many interesting reads and videos. We also have a technical webinar, a virtual webinar that we are all enjoying today. It features experts from various fields and many aviation industry, and to inform our technical issues pertinent to the air traffic control management industry. I must say it's not just user-friendly websites for everyone to learn about GATCA. And it's a whole website, including a project management platform for members, an AGM platform, GATCA blog, a dedicated TWS, what we're having now, and of course, the main GATCA website. It is a network. Once you get there, you have so much to learn. The birthing of this platform will be a great tool for dissemination of information and technical insight to all aviation enthusiasts, whether you are interested in media inquiries, technical assistance, or a partner. We would like to hear from you. Let's all get on board and get enlightened. Ladies and the new and official website of GATCA. That's Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association, gatka.org. Thank you. And I must say, all these things that you enjoy on the website were all put together by controllers.
Thanks a lot, Presido, for the launch of the website and the brevity of it. I'd like to go over the website address again. That's gatka.org. Golf Hotel Alpha Tango Charlie Alpha Oscar Romeo Golf. Golf Hotel Alpha Tango Charlie Alpha Oscar Romeo Golf. gatka.org. Please make sure to visit the website. We will have this webinar, the video of this webinar uploaded onto that website. So, finally, on behalf of the Ghana Air Traffic Controllers Association, I want to thank our panelists for today, Mark and Carl, for making time to join us. I know initially Carl had some difficulty joining us, but we are grateful he was able to join us and share insights on the topic. I want to thank every attendee. I'm sure I couldn't acknowledge all of you, but next time we'll endeavor to do more acknowledgements. Please keep joining subsequent webinars as we share industry insights and learn about the aviation industry. I'd also like to thank GCA management, particularly ATC management, and the IT section of GCA for their continued support for this program. I'd like to thank Passion Air and Zipline for supporting this particular webinar. We hope to keep doing business with you. Finally, to the members of the, I'd like to mention their names: Ben, Aliza, Samani, Charles Labi, Alaska, Jonah, Oko, Bash, and Zaid. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Please don't forget the post-webinar survey. Once you click to exit the Zoom webinar, it will give you a pop-up on your screen to fill in a survey, please do that for us. We will close this webinar with a short prayer. Gracious Lord, we thank you for a successful webinar. Continue to bless our panelists and attendees. Bless the work of our hands as we continue to work hard in our various fields. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Thank you, and enjoy the post-webinar videos before you go. Thank you. God bless you.
Welcome to the fulfillment operations area. We deal with blood products, we deal with vaccines, we deal with regular essential medical products as well.
So it's one of our busiest distribution centers. It serves the whole of the Upper East region. Every 4 minutes or so, you'd see a delivery being made to a facility that really is dependent on our service.
What you can see here is vaccines that we have here as bulk storage that we are keeping here on behalf of some health facilities that are in very difficult to reach locations.
Many products might have gone bad somewhere due to expiration or storage condition. We are saving those products from going bad by centralizing some of these critical products.
So welcome to the flight operations area. This is where all that is done with the drones. The package gets into the drones, and then the drones are launched to the health facility. This centralization allows us to be able to serve patients on demand because of the speed that we carry with aerial logistics.
There are so many health facilities that actually depend on our service on a day-by-day basis. And so what we are doing in Zipline is to ensure that the supply chain is revolutionized into a system that is very responsive to what is actually happening on the field.
It takes not more than 40 minutes for whatever items you request for Zipline to be able to supply it to the facility. When I'm going to do a surgery, if I don't have the blood that is required, I've called Zipline. I can have the confidence to start, because in the middle of the surgery, I'm sure I will get it.
So being able to ensure even distribution of some of these critical commodities is very impactful, because the health professionals know that they can focus on serving the patients without worrying about the inventory of storing some of these complex products.
It has changed the system for us for the better. We are 100% sure of product availability, even when there is shortage.
Being able to make the supply chain so responsive that people can receive that same quality of care wherever they are, it's very impactful to see.
Plans are in place to cover the whole country so that every single facility, every hospital, every health center in the country will have access to these products.
What really sets Zipline apart is our appreciation for all of the complexity that's actually required to build an autonomous logistics service that can operate at national scale and operate reliably enough that people can depend on it with their lives. It is possible for humanity to put every single person on the planet within a 15 to 25-minute delivery of any essential product.
Air traffic control is one of the most interesting and yet most stressful jobs in the world. Aside requiring a great deal of academic intelligence, one requires to pass a rigorous medical exam every year or other year, depending on the age bracket. And this is a prerequisite for the performance of the air traffic control job. The air traffic controllers are behind the scene, playing a pivotal role in the air navigation or an air transport industry. Air traffic control is one of the most interesting and most stressful jobs in the world. Aside requiring a great deal of academic excellence, one requires or needs to pass